this meeting to order. If you could rise for the invocation. Lord, Heavenly Father, as we gather here tonight to conduct business for the city of Leesburg, please give us the wisdom to make decisions that are in our citizens' best interest. This we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Okay, so we're going to start off. We have a presentation from Chief Hicks, who's going to talk about some panhandling issues.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, Manager. My name is Rob Hicks. I'm the Police Chief for the City of Leesburg. I have a brief PowerPoint to illustrate, and I will forward everybody a copy of this at the end of it. Go to the next slide. So I just did a compilation of some stats comparing Leesburg to a couple of other cities in dealing with not only our traffic issues, some panhandling issues, and some others, just to kind of give a wide picture of some of the mitigating strategies that may work if we employ them. And again, it's a multifaceted approach. This is just one aspect of it. I know a lot of people have been calling and commenting over the last couple days, talking about dealing with the homelessness issue as one big swath, and this is just one component of it, which is the panhandling issue. And it's the first and foremost, it's what the police department deals with, because it starts to venture into criminal behavior and criminality. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at here today. So if we look at it, we had 107 complaints from April to April of 17 to 18, and that is a combination of both people calling in complaints or our officers getting out with somebody panhandling or soliciting in a public place. That stat does not account for the numerous times that people have been approached or seen it and have not called the police. So that is just our police interaction. So many folks have got their own stories and heard things, and so that data cannot be tracked on that because we can't record what we don't know about. So the breakdown, as you can see, plazas and shopping centers, businesses, with many of them being in the downtown corridor, and then a good portion of those contacts in the roadway. And I think, as everybody knows, if we would have written down every time we saw somebody in the roadway, that number would have been in the hundreds, of course. I asked for data on the North Lake side because of our separation from Claremont being as far as it is, and Tavares on the other side. I didn't hear back from Lady Lake, but Fruitland Park had 20 total complaints in that same time frame, with 10 of them being the same person. So basically 10 other complaints citywide in Fruitland Park. And that encompasses they're part of the villages in that 466 stretch. Next. So before we discuss moving forward a little bit, the difference between panhandling and aggressive panhandling, it's synonymous with soliciting. Those words can be interchanged in different ordinances throughout the country. So the requesting or attempt to request by spoken, written, printed, word, money, donations, basically any kind of financial assistance. There are cases where just regular soliciting is not prohibited. So in private businesses, if you don't want somebody soliciting, you can certainly post that. There become freedom of speech issues with panhandling or soliciting in city spaces, which is a First Amendment. You can ask somebody for money. But where the problem is, and where it becomes problematic, is when you move down to aggressive soliciting or panhandling, and then it has the same definition, except it adds through harassment, intimidation, interference with free passage, either in foot or vehicle, touch, abusive gestures, and or offensive, profane, abusive language. The harassment or the intimidation can be through size, through action, a lot of different things that you hear where you feel uncomfortable and you feel like you're forced to give somebody money. Some of the specific behaviors about 10 or 15 years ago in some larger cities where people would park to go to events, and many people have experienced this, is you would get out of your vehicle knowing you're going to a venue in a large city, and then somebody would approach you and say, hey, give me $10, because they know what vehicle you're in, and now you feel obligated to give them $10 because they're going to do something to your vehicle otherwise, and they will make innuendo or direct or indirect threats about your public property. Next. So out of those 107 that I was able to document through our computer automated dispatch, these were just some of the ones that spoke directly to the public safety issue. And again, you can just see some of those on there. People approaching traffic, getting into traffic, arguing with the drivers of the vehicles and passengers, banging on windows, yelling at the occupants. In one specific case, and I know there's been others, an employee asked the person to move on and they spit on the employee, cursing them out, knocking windows. One, you can see there who's making stabbing gestures at people that weren't giving them money. First Academy, they were approaching vehicles in the parent pickup line, where that's kind of a captured audience there. They can't move one way or another, and people are over there approaching them. So it kind of runs the gamut. So it shows that the behavior of panhandlers crosses over into that the criminality, the behavior moves into that section. So the complaints in the downtown area that was received and spoke about are also what we've talked about in some of citywide throughout some of the plazas, and we're going to talk about that in a second. I've had an officer assigned to deal with not only some of the homeless issues, but to go around and talk to some of the city business owners, residents, and whatnot. And we've done that periodically, but over the last couple weeks, I've had somebody assigned full-time, Officer Buxton, to do that. And so he spoke with almost probably 200 people that would claim themselves to be homeless. Some of those are repeated contacts, but it was a large portion of people that are here, whether they're panhandlers here or in other cities, but they lay their head here in the Leesburg or surrounding area. So going in and talking to some of the downtown business owners, and I know we have some folks here from the downtown area, and Sandy Moore from the Chamber is going to also speak on this a little bit, but I wanted to cover some of the things that we had through direct interviews about people approaching people using the ATM downtown. Folks feeling uncomfortable about getting their money out because thinking something is going to happen to them. Panhandlers going into businesses and asking patrons for money, obviously doing it around businesses while walking to and from downtown, and then just trespassing, loitering on private property. Again, if they're on the private property when we get there, then we can either issue a trespass warning, and then if they violate that again, then they're subject to arrest, and many times are arrested. But if they're there and somebody tells them, hey, I'm calling the police, and they take off, then we're unable to effect that arrest at that time. Next. So the citywide complaints, you can see, are fairly similar, but the plazas in the main 441-27 corridor and Palm Plaza Gateway, Leesburg Square, Walmart, those complaints range from just people standing at the stop sign and soliciting, all the way to approaching vehicles in the parking lot, also walking out into the roadway. Convenience stores have the same complaints, where people are going into their businesses and soliciting them in their business, making their customers feel uncomfortable, and also intimidating some of the employees. The intersections, as you can see, those were just a handful of intersections that we sort of chose that we get the most complaints at, and those are people approaching out into the roadway. And so why is it significant that people are going out into the roadway in order to do soliciting? We're going to look at the next slide here. And so here's vehicle crash data for the entire county, or for the cities that half the cities that we chose that are surrounding us. As you can see, Leesburg has the highest number of raw crashes per year. We always have for many years. We look at the injuries, although Claremont exceeds our injury crashes and total number of injuries. The next cities comparative to us are, almost half or less than half of the numbers. So there are lots of vehicles moving around in our city and lots of cars bumping into each other in our cities. Now, when we look at the next slide, you're going to look at fatalities, pedestrian crashes, pedestrian fatalities, and bicycle crashes. And you can see Leesburg, unfortunately, leads the way in all of those statistics. So alone in 2016, we had 4 pedestrians that were run over and killed just walking across the street. So we had 1 so far this year. That doesn't count the number. You can see there were 28 pedestrian crashes just in 2017 to 2018. So that is a significant amount of people getting struck just walking around in in the city compared to the cities below. So you can see Mount Dora and Lady Lake would be sort of close because we know Mount Dora has a large downtown. A lot of people walk around, a lot of pedestrians, and so does Lady Lake. They have that same situation. So to the commission, that part of the information that I'm trying to get across is when we look at mitigating issues, it is what is the makeup of our specific city, because we do look at cities like Orlando and others who have made ordinances and some things to help mitigate some of the dangerous factors, the public safety factors. And so that is public safety concerns for our citizens, our business owners, our consumers, our visitors, our residents, and also to the homeless people that call Leesburg their home, and to make sure that they're safe. Because when they're standing out there on those intersections approaching vehicles, I spoke to Legacy today for about 2 hours, and the overwhelming majority part of that conversation had to do with traffic issues. And a couple of times it came up about people on bicycles and walking, and people can't see them and how dangerous that is. And so those are real public safety concerns that I think we should mitigate as a city. So, nope, go back. So looking at those, some of the things that we can do in form of ordinance, and of course we would have a complete ordinance for your review to look at, would include no soliciting, where posted, no soliciting, so that we empower private business owners to, if they do not want soliciting, they can post that at their business. No physical contact without consent would be in part of our ordinance, which leads towards the aggressive panhandling, and then also talking about the permitting uttering of passage to both people being solicited on foot and by vehicle, harassment, and intimidation. So those would all go into an ordinance type issue that we could then look at enforcing with those things. Moving on. So again, when we talked about, because I had people calling me about the overall homelessness issue, I want to remember that the side effects or the symptoms or the effects that we feel from homelessness, which panhandling is certainly one of them, and we have a myriad of other effects. It's a nationwide problem, and it goes from city to city. There are cities that we obviously know that don't have the issue, and there are cities that do have the issue. And so I think it's important for us to partner with public, private, civic organizations, faith-based organizations to come together. And we made some positive movement when we hired a consultant to kind of move in that direction to do what's best for everybody in the city. And so that's kind of where I'm at. Does the commission have any questions of me before I turn it over to Sandy for her input? Nope. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Mayor, Commission, and staff. I'm Sandy Moore with Leesburg Area Chamber of Commerce. Before I address the homeless discussion, I just want to take just a quick moment to thank our city staff and you as a commission for your help after the Morris fire. We were able to quickly and seamlessly transition and really be able to serve our community, and that's thanks to you all for helping us out, so thank you very much. I'd like to echo much of what Chief Hicks has said here tonight. I want to start by saying this is not an easy conversation, because on one side we all have compassion for people who are homeless and in need. The question, I guess, is where these individuals and their rights as citizens interfere with our businesses and their rights, as well as the rights of our customers. I too have been made aware of and have had conversation with business owners about the impact of the homeless population and that impact that it has on our city and their businesses. I have witnessed personally and heard complaints of buildings being defecated on, of people feeling threatened when walking down the sidewalks by individuals approaching them for money. I personally have had to wake up someone and request they move in front of the door at the Morris house before being able to enter the building for work, as well as noticing belongings stashed by homeless in crevices of buildings. It doesn't take much for an impression to be made about our city being unsafe and for that word to spread. One morning, I myself was targeted by one of our well-known homeless in the downtown as I was walking to my office. I was talking on the phone, to which she interpreted that I was calling the police on her. She started yelling at me so loud and with such intimidation that two men came running from behind the building to come to what they thought was my defense. I was used to this particular person talking loud to herself and arguing with herself. But even in this case, I called the police to find out if she had any history of violence toward, being violent to somebody. I can only assume if this happened to someone who was in our town for the first time or someone who wasn't here daily, that this would be the last time they'd come to Leesburg. I've been in other areas of our county and overheard conversation where a complete stranger was telling people to not even bother going to Leesburg and referenced our homeless issue as one of the reasons. This issue is very delicate, but it is one that needs to be addressed. Thank you.
I guess public comment, you think? Absolutely. I think since we don't have a formal agenda item, this was a presentation. If there is anyone else that would like to say anything about this item, we take that comment now.
Do I need to come up there?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Pat Atley. I volunteer for the partnership at the information booth on Saturday mornings down at the market. And some days over in the little park next to the bank, the language, and one of them I think is the one that Sandy referred to, the woman with all of the baggage. And there's another one that's a male. And the language is horrible. If, as Sandy said, if I was a new person here in town, I would say, I'm not going downtown again. And of course, when the music starts playing, then they come over and with their belongings and park on the benches near the fountain to watch the music and to, conversation with each other. It is a problem, and because of they're human beings and they have rights, I know that it's difficult to enforce it. But we do really need to deal with it because it has increased.
Thank you.
My name is Jean Thorpe. I own Aladdin's Gifts, and I am the president of the Downtown Business Association. And while all of this is going on, I think we always need to keep in mind that we are trying to bring people here over and over again for events. We've all spent time, effort, money to make our town as nice as we can. We try to be welcoming and friendly, and we hear that over and over, yet it becomes increasingly hard when we have so much going on in the background. And I just, I don't want to see all of our efforts for nothing. It's hard to continue to do business as we are, and it is time to consider that as well. And while we all have compassion for them, it's time to step up and maybe start looking at the other side of it a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Grizzard, resident of Leesburg. This is really a question for you, Fred. Would it be possible, and I understand this doesn't solve the problem, but it just relocates them, but is it possible that the city could lease the area next to USB to USB, so it's then their property, and that they could enforce the warrant?
I don't know that the city even owns that. And that's a question that we've kicked around.
Actually, on that note, we've talked with Tom Frost. USB actually owns that corner.
Livestream.
Livestream
owns it.
Livestream owns that corner. Okay. And the situation that we were trying to get to is to be able to trespass it. Mm-hmm. So, maybe the city could lease that corner from Livestream.
Well, if the city leases it, it's city property, and they have a right to be there, right?
Yeah, and if the city leases it, it creates more problems than it solves.
Yeah, because we talked about that, because we've got the park issues and the open access.
But then USB could lease that from Livestream just like they lease the bank.
They could, but we're looking at a bigger solution that I believe we'll have an ordinance in May to deal with kind of the whole issue in the area. But yes.
One of the problems that you have is the federal decisions, court decisions, pretty much say that if you don't have sufficient shelter space to put everybody in, you can't do anything about them sleeping outside. So if it's on private property, the owner can trespass them and you can move them out of there. But when they go to the park, there's nothing you can really do unless you've got a shelter for them.
Just as a side note, I acquired the property behind Tractor Supply, which has an environmental easement perpetual, and there's a large encampment there generally. And the reason I did that was to be able to enforce a trespass warrant. But they've not created any problems to me, and I've not received any complaints, but just to let it be known that I have control of that property and have the ability to issue the trespass warrants.
Thank you.
My name is Naomi Gunnels, and I'm new to the city of Leesburg. I just moved here in December, actually. And I just wanted to speak more to the people in the roadway issue, if that's okay. Not necessarily homeless, but I was driving on Radio Road at 11 p.m. on last Saturday and had to stop in the middle of the road because there were 4 teenagers crossing the street, totally jaywalking, and they were yelling at me for almost running into them. So I'm sure the police are handling jaywalking issues, but that might be something that we might also want to include in this particular ordinance. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Unruh. I oversee an On the Way ministry, which is an outreach to the homeless here in Leesburg. I financially cannot do much. We feed them twice a month, give them tents, supplies, toiletries. If they need counseling, we'll counsel with them, or we send them to Joanne's, who is who has the Come As You Are ministry. What it really is going to take is, like Chief Hicks did say, it's going to take a big group of the community people themselves working together to resolve this issue. It's not just my issue, a church issue, or a business issue. It is a community issue. I have worked with the homeless in Orlando. I did go and visit Pinellas Hope in Pinellas County, and both of those were successful. And the way they operated was on a progressive situation type thing. You come in your tent, and you had a place for your tent to get started. You stayed on that property. That's where you lived. You weren't to do your drugs, your drinking, to be there. But they were offered counseling and help to overcome their drugs. There are always going to be those people that don't want it, no matter what you do. So other accommodations must be somehow set up and arranged for them until we can get them to that mental part where they're willing to accept the help they need. And that's where it all starts, is the mental capacity with them. They need to know they have a need. They need to know that they're wrong in what they're doing. They need to know and accept the fact they need the help, okay? And until you start at that basic issue, all the counseling, all the ministry, all the pushing at them, it won't do a thing, because so many of them will not go into a program. But they come to where we are willingly because they know we're not going to force them into doing anything. They come, they eat, we talk with them, and we have helped quite a few because of that fact, that we just accept them for who they are and where they are. We have helped several of them have come up and finally gotten jobs. They've gotten off the street because you got to start rebuilding their self-worth. And I'm more than willing to meet with anybody that wants to get together as a group community and start really doing something to face this issue and get something done. I do have a heart for these people, and they're just as valuable as we are. It's just life. A lot of them, life has kicked them to the side of the road, and we know several of them. There are just as many out there that do not do drugs. They're Christian people who lost everything they had because they lost a job. Their husband, quote, wife walked off and left them, and then from there it was just a downhill slope. So we can't pack them all into one gamut and say they're all this way, because they're not. I've got several that I'm very close friends with, and they come and they volunteer with us. They help us at the hall. I associate with the Alliance Church, and I personally attend Grace Tabernacle. So I guess you can say it's the Alliance Church and Grace Tabernacle. Those two churches, they're alone working together. We're seeing some turnaround in some of these people. So if you guys can help us somehow get the community to pull together, have a meeting, and with the business people, other people in the community that really want to start coming to do some solid solutions, I'll be right there in the middle of it. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Okay.
So we can expect an ordinance on May?
The first May meeting, we're working on drafting a panhandling ordinance, which we'd like to bring to you for first reading, and I believe it's May 14th.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. I mean, if we do an ordinance, we're going to have to enforce it. And even without an ordinance, we still got kind of a public safety issue, even without the ordinance there. So one thought I have is adding police officers, 1, 2, however many that patrol downtown, patrol the plazas by bicycle, particularly I think would be effective, or downtown by foot or bicycle. And even to the extent that there are, if we have Supreme Court restrictions on what we can do, and we're going to continue to have homeless and have people approaching, at least if they're, to address the concern of people feeling safe coming to downtown Leesburg or to the plazas, that if we have a regular patrol enforcing that might add to some safety. And when we do create an ordinance or pass an ordinance and it's going to have to be enforced, we're going to have that officer available to be able to make any necessary enforcement, address enforcement issues. On the, I particularly have noticed, and I don't know where these deaths occur on the road, but I think that there's a corridor there by the Walgreens at Pixiola, and I think, is that still the city right there? That I think so, because the new Domino's is there, and they're in the city. And so I don't know, what can we do anything about jaywalking and to address that issue, and maybe have somebody again get back to this patrol officer that can be there at some point in time and do something to try to.
Yes, we address as we see them. We address those issues. And that corridor that you're talking about pretty much is the 27 corridor from South 27 up through the Pixiola. We've had a couple of the fatalities on 441, but they're usually on the main thoroughfares there. We do enforce them when we see them, but again, it's like everyone here is driving and they see things all the time, and where's a cop when you need one?
I came about this close one day myself, and he was very angry with me that I missed him, or I hit, but again, I mean, it put himself right in danger, and I see it a lot. I mean, we do frequent that Walgreens there, but that's a thought on the enforcement side, and the I think I want to say in regards to the community getting together and everything. I mean, it is an issue that we needed to address, and I've said it before, and this isn't isolated in Leesburg, it's everywhere, and I understand that Leesburg may be an area that, whether it's a crossing route or whether it's other cities that maybe bring people here, in fact, to facilitate that. I think that one good thing about Leesburg is that as a community, we have a big heart, and individually, there are a lot of people with big hearts in Leesburg. The bad side of that is that it tends to possibly attract people who don't have means to come to Leesburg. I personally know that people come to Leesburg looking for help, and so they're coming from other places because they know of the generosity of some of the not-for-profits and the churches that are there. And this last week, we had one come through our church and looking for a handout, and turns out, well, we got the story, and I know that he came to Leesburg because he was understood, he was told that there would be places for he and his family if they came to Leesburg. So they're actually from Missouri, went to, they're coming from out of state and come through other places in Florida, but they ended up in Leesburg here, and we're just a little town with a big heart, but not with big pockets to be able to deal with these issues alone, and so that happens, and I think I've asked Al if he would coordinate a meeting with me on one of these particular groups to see if we could talk, because I think there does need to be some participation in those people with big hearts in town to understand that there is a little bit of a contribution factor in what they may be doing to bring people into town. So I bring that up, and I do think that as we address this issue, that we do need to look at, we need to ask those with the big hearts and those not-for-profits with the big hearts to also understand the effect that it's having on Leesburg and our businesses to continually bring people in from outside, to attract people from outside of Leesburg to come in here. And frankly, to build a, and I know we're not talking about this, but to build a homeless shelter, I think you're only adding to the attraction to come to Leesburg. And I think it's time that we start balancing our compassion with the resources that we have, and with the where we need to be as a community, and the changes that we need to make. And I think the ordinance is a good step. So I'm just concerned as an attorney, and as Fred knows, that these things are very difficult to stand up, and I hope the community understands that. I saw a post on Facebook this week, and it's like, why isn't the city doing this? Why isn't the city doing that? And it's hard to explain and to understand why people have the liberties that they do to ask for money, to be in public places, to sleep places, to go, yeah, and they have, but fortunately and unfortunately, our United States Constitution allows certain liberties to people, and so they have the rights to do that. Another thing to balance is that, and I was listening to the speaker there, that we need to get them to know that they need help, and we got to get them where they're willing to want help. Well, their moms, their dads, their brothers, their sisters, their children, their friends, their business, their associates, everybody. There have been hundreds of people in these people's lives that have tried to get them to know that they need help, to get them to want to have help. And why we think as a city commission or as a police department or as a community that we can help somebody to know that they need help and want to have help when they've had close family members and associates not to be able to convince them of those things, I think we're fooling ourselves. And we have to accept that some people are just who they are, and that we don't need to waste our resources the way that their mothers and their fathers and their children and their brothers and their sisters and their friends and their business associates wasted on them. And that we can't just do that as a community, and that we need to balance this compassion with reason.
Yeah, those are really good points. A lot of these people that we know, that we've tried to help over and over again, they're severely mentally ill, and the idea that they're going to that we can come in and do that's not really in the city's, I think, capability. But on your point, I think it's an interesting one about the cop, and this is just something to throw out there, is maybe we could look at the code enforcement model, where we'd have maybe like a non-sworn officer that could kind of deal with some of this stuff, and then also, I think importantly, coordinate the resources we have in the community so they're used in a responsible manner. We work with these nonprofits and try to coordinate how the feedings happen. So maybe it's in a structured environment instead of, we have a big issue because someone comes in a van every day and delivers food to everyone downtown. And that's not productive. But there are ways to be productive about it, and maybe we could help with that coordination between those resources and like you mentioned, some education.
Well, and back to the police officer thing, I mean, and thank you to the police department for their continuing effort with some of the crime issues that we have, but we do continue to have those too. So I see that there could potentially even be some crossover there if it's a police officer, and being able to also police those the fast food places and the plazas there along 27 too. So.
Well, I've talked to Chief Hicks, and I understand he's got a fine line. I mean, I'll honestly, my feelings is, while I agree wholeheartedly with both of Commissioner Roebuck, Mayor Roebuck and Commissioner Bone. Excuse me. I mean, my father's a pastor of a church. I grew up in that, so I understand the humanity side and the compassion side. But if you were to take the scripture, as the pastor next door to me here would say, the Bible speaks of a community's responsibility to the widows and the orphans, but it very plainly says that if a man don't work, don't let him eat. And so, I'm always amazed at everybody who wants to help them, But yet, nobody gives them cigarettes and beer and dope, but they always can find it. So to me, if a guy's choosing to have a six-pack over a sandwich, that's kind of his personal preference. That's the decision I make every day. I like the sandwich myself. And, I think until the community understands that we have to quit enabling them and basically supporting everything, where all they got to do is raise a little money for a six-pack, and that's all they had to do for the day, I think we're beating a dead horse. And I'm completely with Commissioner Bone. I mean, I don't support building a facility here in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I think if we were to put the chief on the spot today, I know from personal experience in my time in law enforcement, Leesburg for a long time has had the reputation of helping, and other law enforcement agencies, which we'll leave nameless, the first thing they do when they run across a homeless person is load them in a patrol car and drive them to the city limits into Leesburg and say, go that way, dude, they'll help you out, but not here. And so, we get dumped on because of that. And, I'm more of a proactive mentality, and I understand the hoops that the chief's on. I mean, for me, I would assign a bicycle guy to every homeless guy, and every time he spit on the sidewalk backwards, I'd write him a citation and put his butt in jail until he just decided it would be easier to hang out somewhere else than here. But, I don't want to spend $1 million building a facility and staffing it and doing all that. I support this. I just want to know what teeth this gives us other than in the panhandling aspect.
Right now, this just tackles the panhandling.
Okay. Just a step towards, I understand. Well, I support it.
Okay, no other comments? We'll go ahead and move on to the agenda. Wake up my all right, the consent agenda. Routine items are placed on the consent agenda to expedite the meeting. The commission staff wish to pull any item. The procedure is as follows: 1, pull the item from the consent agenda. 2, vote on remaining items with 1 roll call vote. 3, discuss each pulled item and vote by roll call. Do we have any items that need to be pulled?
4B3.
Anything else? Just have to motion to approve the remaining items.
Motion to approve, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Dennison?
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck?
Yes. So we have 4B3 if someone would like to introduce.
I'll introduce and ask you to read by title only, please.
Ratification of City Manager Emergency Purchase, approval of Amendment 1 to Task Order Number 4 with Booth and Associates, Inc. for additional services related to the Center Street Substation Upgrade Project.
Move for approval. Second.
The reason I pulled this, I'd like to know why we have additional charges because of Duke Energy.
Well, it's not all necessarily Duke Energy, but let me give you a quick update. Glenn, if you can help me out, we'll move forward. The situation started that we needed to make certain upgrades to the Center Street substation. In association with that, we also solicited Duke, I don't know if solicited is the right word, but we enlisted Duke to come in and make some ancillary improvements to the substation as we invested in improvements. So we have a number of improvements that we have been working on, which were budgeted items. And in brief, they're changing out switch gears, changing out breakers, upgrading and improving bushings and conductors and transformers, and then fixing various relays. The Center Street substation has 2 transformers. I think it then distributes out to about 5 or 6 different circuits. And then that load split over those 2 transformers. In association to that, on what they call the high side of the transformer, Duke is also making improvements to some of their switch gear. They're improving the conductor of the transmission lines that comes in and hooks into our substation. And they're also, if you notice, they're raising the level at which that transmission line enters the substation. It took us months to get Duke to start making these improvements. And as they made some improvements, we determined that we had to make associated improvements in our substation. And so how we got into the situation of the emergency procurement for engineering services was as Duke moved along on some of their issues, they said, hey, you need to fix your side of the substation. We capitulated, but Duke said, oh, by the way, if you don't get it done by time certain, we're going to have to move our crews off and then come back and reschedule work. So we started moving our side of the equation to line up with Duke, so while we have him here in the city, we can get all this work done at once. In addition to that, what we're also handling is that the improvement that we'd like to see at the end of the day is the screening around the substation. So we have about 40 grand in additional costs in engineering side so that we can keep up with Duke, and hopefully we get those things moved out. We make those improvements to the substation. Duke stays in town, and if all goes as planned, we can get these improvements done by June.
I still don't understand, why are we allowing Duke to tell us what we can and can't do as far as our schedule?
Because because they're our transmission feeder, and if we don't work in association with their scheduling on the transmission side, they're moving their crew out. They move their crew out, we can't make our substation improvements as fast as we want to because they'll reschedule the work. And then they'll reschedule it, they'll push off the work. So we're on a schedule to get everything done by June. If we had stopped, they will reassociate or realign, reassign their transmission crews somewhere else, and then it's uncertain when we will be able to get Duke to bring them back.
Didn't we have a schedule or anything with Duke prior to this all starting?
That one I'm not aware of.
Glenn Spurlock, Director of Electric Department. Yes, we did. And for example, just in the last 2 weeks, the commissioning, the part that Duke was responsible for on the high side of the station, because they had de-energized the half of the high side of the station so we could take our transformer out of service and do our work. While that was going on, they went ahead and changed out a breaker and also changed some relays. We're changing out breakers, fixing our equipment, and changing out protection and control equipment as well. So as of last week, both teams were scheduled to have all of that done on Wednesday. Okay, we were ready, and we were waiting on Duke to finish their piece. Duke then said, well, we're not going to be ready on Wednesday, we're going for Thursday. Duke said, okay, it's Thursday, we're not ready, we're going to have it done on Friday. They weren't done on Friday, they said we're going to be done by 11 a.m. on Saturday. They were finished at 6:00 p.m. on Saturday. Okay, so what's going on is for us to do this work, we have our team, our staff, employees. We also have a contract firm with Booth and Associates for them to assist us in this commissioning component. So we had our contractor who had to be here, be ready with us on Wednesday last week, but stay the time across to the Saturday when Duke was ready to actually finish the project. So the project is, the way the substations are, we jointly own the substation. We own our components, our equipment. They own the high voltage delivery to the station. So we're both in this together, in this ownership of the asset within the fence. So we've made an effort to coordinate with them. When we do work on our side, let's go ahead and do ours at the same time they're doing theirs, so that we're not inconveniencing or risking the reliability of our customers in the process of doing our piece, risking their reliability to them, then have them come back in the station later and risk our customers' reliability again while they're doing their piece. So we want to get it done all at the same time, okay?
Is there nobody in management that knows what's going on? I know that's a question. We know what management's like, but isn't there somebody overseeing this transmission group that can finally say, that's it, let's finish this project?
There is. Before I joined the city as an employee, Duke had 4 different project managers on this project. Each one was originally selected to run all the details of the project. Where we are today, and since I've been on staff, is we're on our 5th project manager. I've talked to folks above his level and above their level to get this coordinated, and so is the rest of them. My supervisor of substation, Dave, is over here as well, and he's done the same. So we're doing everything we can, but when it comes down to the end where they claim that they call into their dispatch office and their dispatch office says, sorry, we can't let you take that transmission component out today because there's other things going on elsewhere in the state and it affects the flows across the grid. At that point, there's really nothing we or even the contract or the Duke team can do about it while they're waiting on the control center to give them that control, and it delays the process. We've gone through this over a long many months, okay, and it's very frustrating for me, and I've only come in late in the game, but we're working with Duke to remedy this problem.
But it's not costing Duke anything, it's costing Leesburg money.
Actually, a lot of it costs Duke money. Okay, Duke had a transmission construction crew working around the station, and then they shut down for Hurricane Irma. And
Last
said,
year.
nobody works on this stuff. Well, the project has been ongoing.
I have Duke Energy. I know nobody was working during that hurricane.
Yes. And I used to work for them for 21 years, and I'm embarrassed to admit that. But what happened was they shut down all their contractors. They said, hurricane's coming, everybody go home. We'll call you as soon as the storm has passed, and we'll get you back to work. A lot of those people decided, we're not coming back to work for Duke, even though we have a contract. We're going to go to Puerto Rico and make good contractor money, or St. Thomas, or St. John's, or other places in the Caribbean. So now Duke brings in a different contractor who has to pick up where the last one was, and has to figure out what they have done, what they haven't done, and take it over to try and take it to the end. And then we turn around and find out that Duke has redeployed that crew to another part of their system, and we have to wait 3 weeks before they come back. Okay, so we're really struggling with this on the Duke side. We are working with their management team to get it remedied, but we're still running into a few of the glitches where the rubber meets the road on this.
And is this the last time we have to come for more money from Leesburg, or is this just, well, it'll happen again?
It'll happen again. This is
And what is
one.
What is Duke in this game?
Let me get back to that. This is one of 5 substations that we own and operate, and each one of them is fed by Duke. The bottom line is we are on Duke's transmission grid, and every time we move to make an improvement to one of the substations, all the issues that Glenn mentioned about scheduling and coordinating with Duke will happen again. And bottom line is we really have no choice. These are improvements that we need to make to our substation. We have a responsibility to our customers at the end of the day to provide reliable electric service to them. And our transmission voltage energy is coming from Duke. And there's nobody else in the state who will provide that except for off of Duke's transmission lines.
Well, I really, and we know what Duke is like. We saw it during the hurricane, so.
Yes.
It is, it'll say hit and miss. I don't want to say that Duke is costing us more money, but it's certainly costing us aggravation. And at the end of the day, what we get out of the project there at Center Street is an upgraded substation that does need this type of maintenance, and hopefully it will be a little more aesthetically pleasing to the eye after the improvements are done, which hopefully will be in June.
Okay.
And I do just want to add, just for the public record, because I get asked this all the time, why do you buy your power from Duke? We don't buy our power from Duke. We buy it from generation. Duke carries pretty much everyone's transmission lines, and that's a regulated thing, so just to be clear there.
Right. Mayor, we, as you know fully, we buy all of our generation as a partnership with other municipals through the FMPA, Florida Municipal Power Agency. They buy power from other utilities. They have built their own power plants, and they operate their own power plants, and that combination is the resource we use for 100% of our energy. The only way to get it from all those power plants that they either own or are contracted from is across the Duke Energy system to the high side of our 5 stations.
Well, we know what I'd like to do with Duke, but moving on.
Okay, so any other comments?
You might want to query Jerry Miller.
That's
at the
right.
next league meeting.
Yes.
Comments from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes.
Commissioner Dennison?
Yes.
Commissioner Bowen?
Yes.
Mayor Robeck?
Yes. All right, so on to public hearings and non-routine items. Someone like to introduce 5A?
Introduce and recommend by title only, Mr. Mayor.
an ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, amending Article 4, Chapter 25, Section 25-292, parentheses 24, City of Leesburg Code of Ordinances, establishing criteria for donation boxes, providing for definitions, permitting requirements, maintenance, local criteria, signage, exemptions, revocation, appeals and penalties, repealing conflicting ordinances, and providing an effective date.
This is a first reading, and this is coming back because we'd asked at the last meeting that we just ban them entirely, and Fred, doing his research, has found that the state in its infinite wisdom has said, no, you can't do that. So the next best thing is regulations to at least give us some control over it.
So, Mr. Mayor, we identify where these boxes are currently, so once the ordinance passes, we can go and talk to the people who have them that's not in compliance with ordinance to either move them or come in compliance.
Yes. Okay. We have staff working on that as we speak, so that once it's adopted, we'll move on it.
Do we have to allow them to be not-for-profits to be exempt from having to?
From the permit fee?
From having to have a permit, because the ordinance is drafted.
We don't have to allow that. It was just a feature in the ordinance.
I would say, and I was wondering, can we increase the fee too? Or is
You can
25%?
increase it to the level that would cover the cost of regulating them. You can't make it a punitive tax on.
Right.
I mean, Dan could figure out maybe what it costs in staff time to process a permit.
I mean, and I don't want to be
Code
punitive.
enforcement,
At this
compliance
point,
costs.
yeah, not punitive, but at least so, my thought is if you're going to pay $100 just because you have like a legitimate use for that, you're really going to do something. It's not $25. People might just say, oh, okay, whatever, and maybe kind of help with compliance. So that was my only thought there.
Between now and second reading, we'll come up with a better analysis on that.
And then I was wondering, do we have to allow signage on all three sides of the box, or could we only allow it on one side?
You can limit that.
That would be another thing. And then it also allows for, based on the parcel size, you to have multiple boxes. Is that something we have to do? Or we could just allow one per parcel?
You could allow one.
To me, that would be another thing. Just one is plenty.
And I think, trying to find the setback, okay. I know we have a 25-foot visibility triangle that's in there, but I don't see is there a setback requirement itself, or other than the visibility triangle?
No, there is, yeah.
So,
Dan can answer that in detail for you.
Dan Miller, Planning and Zoning Manager. These are considered accessory structures, therefore the minimum setback would be 5 feet from the side and rear property lines. We can change that if you like.
I'd like to see it, 30 feet away from, a public road, something, some significant distance away from the public road. So, and I think we had talked about before that in doing this, they have to make sure they still comply with their parking requirements for the.
That is correct. They cannot take up required parking.
And can we put anything in there if they're going to have them that there has to be some sort of basic landscaping or something around it, too, that you put in some shrubbery and things like that might make it a little more attractive. Can we do things like that, or?
I don't know why not.
So rather than just go throw a box out there and leave it, just if there's some something to make it a little more sightly.
One per parcel, signage on only one side.
Yeah, and I probably would ask to put something. I'm just thinking here, put some setback requirements from required parking spaces. So they have to be within. They have to meet their basic required parking, and the box has to be at least 30 feet away from the nearest parking spot, or something like that. They can't. So you end up with a box, and people have to park right next to it, and with the stuff spewing out of it.
Yeah, we've got 4 modifications, and the commission brought up one name on the box, 1 box per location, a deeper setback requirement, and a landscape requirement.
Yeah, and I think there was a higher permit fee too.
And higher.
And for everyone.
And
No-
what
no
about
exemptions
required
for-
pickups or something?
Yeah, I don't like the way that's defined in here. It says that it'll be done on a reasonable basis or something like that.
Yeah, I think you should put a time limit on that.
Which
where it has when it has to, there has to be a pickup. I don't recall right where that was. It's a very vague, says it has to be
Okay, we'll find it.
emptied at a reasonable
That's in B3,
B3,
the maintenance.
emptied on a regular schedule, such that at no time will donations overflow. So, I guess that covers it from overflowing at least.
Yeah. It'd probably be kind of hard to enforce if you said weekly. Unless we're-
Thank you.
Are
Comments
you
from the
going to
public?
issue a fine for the overflowing and the mess and everything else?
I think that goes back to our wouldn't it go back to having that citation provision to issue citations to have a fine or?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. The citation's available for any code violation. I think there's a provision in there that they can actually be removed if they're become unsightly. So that's sort of your
Yeah,
ultimate
I saw
sanction.
that in there. Okay.
Any comments from the public? Okay, this will lead to our next meeting. 5B, if someone can introduce.
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only, please.
An ordinance of the City of Leesburg, Florida, amending the land use regulations to add a definition for feather flags and to modify existing regulations pertaining to use of feather flags, repealing conflicting ordinances, providing a severance clause, and providing an effective date.
Discussion. And I had been pushing it. So our current code doesn't allow feather flags, but it's hard.
Got rid of this thing.
But apparently it's hard to enforce because you can say that my feather flag has been here for 15 years and it's grandfathered in.
Oh, wow.
Now, one thing I did think, though, I think in fairness, because we've allowed it for so long, is to put some sort of date in the future that we would start enforcing it. So if you bought a flag today, I'd feel real bad if we said, now you got to pull it up. But these things don't last for more than like 6 months or a year before they have to be replaced. So my thought was we'd have some sort of time that, okay, we enact it and then we enforce it in the future, so that way you didn't just waste your money.
The ordinance as presented allows a 30-day time, and let me explain how we got there. Mike Rankin and I kicked that back and forth and ultimately came to the conclusion that every feather flag in the city is already illegal because you're only supposed to have them on large parcels with a PUD, and none of them comply with that, so you don't really have to provide too much of an amortization provision because the things are already illegal. The amortizations are for signs or other buildings that are built that are legal when you build them, legal when you buy them, and then you outlaw them. And the law says, well, you've got to give those people a reasonable return on their investment. If it's illegal when you put it up, you don't get that.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because we haven't enforced it, people think they're legal and just being.
I didn't know until I got
Accepting.
into this that you could just go on the internet and order them from 500 different places.
No, I just ordered
It
something
surprised
from the
me.
church.
That's in Wildwood.
No, not Leesburg. That's why I didn't order for. I did see something was coming in. They come downtown, so I think people do think they can do it, and they just put them up. And who's gonna pick them up?
And the thing is, and I do feel bad about this because you got 10% of the people that use them in a responsible manner. They change them out and they look fine. Then you got 90% of them that are falling apart and just aren't. So I think this does allow for some special events. So
Did the commission want a longer grace period in there, or is the 30 days okay?
I don't care. I'm just saying, are we gonna enforce it? That's, no matter what it
Enforce
is.
it.
No, it's easy enough. Any flag that's out there 30 days after you pass it that doesn't have a permit for a special event, usage is
Down.
illegal. It comes down.
Okay.
any comments from the public? Okay. That will lead over to our next meeting. So now we're on to 5C. If someone would like to introduce.
I'll introduce and ask to be read by title only, please.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, approving a facade, sign, and landscape grant for Lake Square Mall in the amount of $500,000 and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
This is really in response to the commission a few months ago after the mall changed ownership. The commission asked for us to investigate the possibility of expanding our facade sign landscape program from smaller businesses, and the grant award that is existing. I think our existing grant awards up to $20,000, and the commission and in your zero capacity just issued about $80,000 worth of grants to various businesses throughout the community to make these improvements. But we modified that to include major employment centers that would be eligible for the FSL program. The theory behind that, to prime the pump, hope for and encourage major redevelopment. When the mall changed ownership, they came in, made a presentation to you. Before you is in your packets is a copy of the malls of Lake Square Mall's FSL presentation, but essentially what they're looking to do is make these facade and new entryway improvements to the facility. I think their initial one that they targeted is what we'll call the main entry, which is near Belk's Books A Million and immediately faces 441. Their application indicates that they're spending upwards of $1.5 million. I think it's officially $1.47 million on improvements. And before you is a request to fund their FSL MEC grant up to an amount of $500,000. We did not have this as a budgeted item. This was a program that we started this fiscal year in reaction to the mall changing ownership, and out of, I think, hope and encouragement to redevelop the mall property. So if you do award this grant, we would recommend that you take these monies out of the general fund reserve account, and the general fund reserve account is at a position to where it could sustain up to a $500,000 grant for these improvements.
So I know attached is a breakdown of some of the improvements. Are we approving the actual distribution of this now, or this is up to?
This tonight is what you would approve the grant up to, and then I believe the way the grant's written, I would leave it up to the mall ownership. I think the grant gives them the opportunity. They could either take it in a lump sum upon completion, or I think they can take two draws, a middle draw and an end draw. So let's say you fund them at $100,000. They could take the $100,000 at the end, or take $50 in the middle and $50 at the end, or whatever.
Only if we approve it.
Only
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're not doing that tonight.
You have to approve that.
We're just saying we'll go up to
tonight
it, right?
would be is you approve the amount. We'll do the necessary paperwork. They get to work. They then have to petition you for that midterm withdrawal. And that's where I think where you hold them accountable. If you see work happening, I would assume that you would approve a midterm draw. If you don't, then I would assume you wouldn't.
But we're not approving any draws tonight. Right?
Tonight is approval of the grant amount.
Yeah, and I think this is an issue that I think of some people in Leesburg, including myself, recognize that I think the mall is valuable to the city, job-wise and economically. Our fire assessment, just go through a number of reasons why it's important, and I'll tell you that those stores that the mall has put out there are top notch. Those first few stores that they've done, so they're really making an effort, and there's stores that could be in any mall in Orlando, in my opinion. And I see them advertising. I was up in the Villages and saw the square, the new square, I think is what it's called, or something there, and I'm over into Overway. So I think it's important and has a potential to really do something to help the mall turn around and be an asset to Leesburg. So.
I'm in favor of doing this for the mall because I know the new owners are going to use it wisely and it's going to make a massive improvement. I do have a question though, not for the mall, but for the other four that we've spent $80,000 on so far. Does anybody do a follow-up with them to make sure it's been done?
Yes, we will. We had I think we issued about 8 grants, maybe 10. We had a preliminary meeting with all of those recipients where owner or representative from the businesses met with Mr. Rankin and Mr. Miller to get lined out on what they need to do. And those are reimbursement only. So they were issued kind of directives on how to make their improvements, when to petition for their funding, and upon their completion, we'll reimburse.
All right, thank you.
Well, speaking on my part, I mean, I definitely understand the value and the need for the mall and for it to succeed. I don't know about you guys, but I've pretty much been inundated after this came out from residents who, you know, look at it as it's a private business, and we're using, if we approve this figure, that's a hefty amount of taxpayer dollars to do, you know, a remodel on a business. I think my only question is, or something that I would want to put out there, I know Rick's here, you know, the last people that bought it, they bought it for $14 million, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously we supported them and their efforts the same way we are now. And then they turned around a couple years later and sold it for $20 million. And so, you know, they did pretty well. And obviously, you know, they did some things, the first group, with the entertainment aspects of it, and now, you know, the new owners are really trying to step up and bring the shops in. But $10,000 to a business and $500,000 is a very vast number. And so I believe in priming the pump, but, you know, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion from you guys as far as how much money they're going to spend, you know, parking lots and restaurants out front and water fountains and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think for me, the more I see happening, besides just some new stores inside, the more I see money being spent, the more motivated I am to help prime the pump, opposed to approve $500,000 and then other things fall apart and don't come to fruition. I think that's my only concern on the issue.
I think that's why I was making sure myself that we weren't approving, you know, writing a check for $500,000 or $100,000 or anything like that tonight. It's a
No, you're writing a check tonight.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking.
Assuming they do the work.
Assuming they do the
Okay.
work, they'll write the check, and then the way it is right now is
They have to come back and ask for
they
the
have to
money.
come back. We have to
Then we'll
approve
write
it,
the-
and then
we'll write the check.
we would pay them. So the step in between there is if they want that midterm draw, that would have to come back to you for approval. So you're writing a check tonight.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm uncomfortable writing a check without having, you know, I'm confused because you're telling me that we're approving to give them $500,000. It's just a question of when we're going to give it to them. Right. But we owe them $500,000 if we vote for this tonight, and then it turns out they only do $500,000 worth of improvements. Then
they wouldn't qualify for the payment.
Okay, they have to do everything that's
They
on
have
this
to do
list.
everything they say. They have to show us expenses up to $1.4 million. They have to make the improvements that's on that list to our satisfaction pursuant to the grant rules.
Okay. So
And
that's
now
where I
that's
was-
up for
that's where I was-
interpretation and debate if you ultimately don't cut the check. But essentially, yeah, you're cutting a check tonight, and then you're turning it over to staff to ensure that the guidelines of the grant and the improvements are done pursuant to the way it's written.
Is the 1.4 in addition to the 500, which would bring us to 1.9, or is it included?
No, it's included. It's inclusive.
And I'll say, because I was the one that pushed to up the limit to 500, so I looked at their property tax bill. It's about $250,000 a year, which is significantly more than Core Slab, and we're giving Core Slab a lot of money between the reduced purchase price and that. And then there's the job aspects, and then the electric. They're probably they're our top 3 electric customers. I mean, Trolley's probably bigger.
I can't tell you that, but they're a big
maybe
user.
Walmart, Publix
They're a big user.
Eventually, so
Well, the individual businesses are, don't
right. But if they were to go
cautious.
dark,
Yeah, but that's, it's not all coming from them, but they're the only ones benefiting from the check.
I'll put it this way, because I'm with Commissioner Roebuck on this. I mean, if there was a piece of dirt out there, and you had a developer that came in and said, we want to build a mall here, will you throw in $500,000 on it? We'd probably jump all over it. And so this is a group that I have some confidence in with what they're trying to do there. I've seen little pieces of it. The evidence is there for me to say these people are serious, and they have an idea. They have some connections in the retail industry, and they're making a real effort. And so I'm comfortable from that aspect to take. I mean, you're taking risk. I mean, it's we know what the history of the mall there, but I think I think it's an investment that cities would make under these kinds of circumstances to help stimulate the economy, give it a chance to work there, and
Believe me, there's nothing more I want than to have good retail here at home. I'm tired of driving like everybody else is, so I get that, and that by no means. My point was, we're not with a blank piece of dirt hoping to start a new business. We're in one that keeps turning over and everybody's making money off of it. So I'm just trying to see, I've said from the beginning, I definitely support this. I'm just being cautious, and I've had a lot of resistance from people saying we're spending taxpayer money in a large sum, and it potentially could be just, hoping for the next.
I think that's one of my concerns, and I think we talked about it before, that there is no caveat to say, here's $500,000, you can't sell it next month. So and I'm agreeing with Commissioner Hurley, how does that make you comfortable if you walked in, the Daily Commercial came and said the city of Leesburg grants $500,000, 2 months later the mall owner now is selling this property for $22 million. So I think that's something we all got to make sure we can stomach if that happens, is hey, we just created an investment. Hopefully property taxes go up because now it's worth $3-4 million more. But I think that's what we all must make sure that we're conscious of. I think with Core Slab, we're saying, okay, if you produce so many jobs, we give you property tax abatement because you're doing A, B, and C, and D. Or we're saying to a piece of dirt, there's nothing there. When you build it, it's going to instantaneously generate the property taxes increase. But I think with this, what Commissioner Earl is kind of saying is that from the previous owner, this is what happened. So I think in these kind of grants, that may be the next level we may look at. Okay, we give you $500,000. Can we put something in there that says, you are restricted from selling this property in 2 years after you produce more stores, more property taxes, and the city can say, hey, we got $200,000 of property taxes, and that we can kind of, make me feel a little better. So I think maybe not, if we're not able to do it on this one, I think in the future we may need to put something in these grants that people don't just look at the flip for their personal pocket.
I wouldn't necessarily call this a flip either. I mean, yeah, the first developer made some money on it. They put a lot of money in there. You look at what they did with the entertainment center there, with the go-karts, the amusement, the bowling alley. They totally upgraded the theater. I don't know how this new theater is going to be in Mount Dora, but I don't have any problem going to the theater at the Lake Square Mall there. I mean, it's nice, seats and everything, so that are there. So what they've done, and now they sold it, and for a higher amount to the current buyer. The current owner now demonstrates to me a real effort to make further improvement. And if they turn around in 2 years and flip it and make $10 million, then good for them and good for the city of Leesburg, because the property values just went up, and I would assume that investor is going to take it to another level. At that point in time, we're going the right direction with the mall. It could easily be going the opposite way, where it turns into a flea market or just closes down altogether. And so another thing about it, and this was something I was going to have for roll call, is that we're getting some good press from the newspaper, from the Daily Commercial, and they're recognizing what's going on. I think today there was some articles about downtown and what's happening. And so this also has a benefit of, look at what's happening in Leesburg, and the city of Leesburg is supporting this developer there on the mall. Look at this picture that's going to be getting around in the newspaper and social media and everything. And once these things start happening and people are driving by the corridor and they're seeing what's going on there at the mall, it's going to draw more and more attention to the good things that are happening here, and all the pieces just fit together. So it's a $500,000 investment. We just did an $800,000 investment on the corridor there at 27 and 441, It's just, to me, it's just all part of us stepping up our game as a city and really showing that this is a place that you want to have your business.
And I do think it is good. I mean, it's good that we're skeptical giving away $500,000. I mean, you should be. It's a lot of money. But for me, with both of the ownership groups, I do think there's a very different level of commitment. I'm sure you talked to the other ownership group. You know, all these stores they've done inside, they did. The stores weren't paying those. The mall ownership, footed the bill on that. Whereas the prior group, it was not always all their stuff.
Well,
so.
Please, I don't want the stigma here to leave tonight with me being painted as I don't support this, and that's not what I was trying to get. And I do think that this group has taken it to the next level, and I agree with you. If they take it and turn it around and flip it, and it becomes bigger and better, and that's awesome. I mean, if they get Tommy Bahama and Victoria's Secret and Johnson Murphy and name brands in here, there's nowhere it can go but up. But if they didn't, all I'm saying is, if every other time we spend $500,000, we all talk about it and discuss it. It's a lot of money. It's not $50,000, and I don't think it's wrong to let those who receive the grant understand the taxpayer who pays that money in taxes wants just to feel affirmed that it's going to the right direction. And for those of us who are supposed to be good stewards of this money, there's nothing wrong with us expecting them all to understand that we put a responsibility on them to take this money that we're giving them. It's a lump sum. We could do 100 capital improvements with $500,000. And so we are invested in it, and we've done 100 things to help both groups along the way because we do believe in it, and that's what's wonderful. But I don't think that it's wrong to say, this is a serious chunk of change, and we want the mall to accept it with a partnership in mind of not just half-heartedly, and we're just throwing money out there. We really expect results to show as a result of our partnership and our effort. That's all I'm trying to say. I just, and I feel much better because I did not realize, I didn't realize until Al said it that they have to complete the 1.4 before they got it. So I'm totally fine now.
If they ask for it,
They don't have to. That's so.
Up to us.
If tonight you are cutting a check for X dollars, and as long as they make those improvements, that money's out the door.
Does $140,000 worth of improvements, $1,400,000 of improvements.
Right. However, the way you have written the program for the MEC grant applicant is they can come and request an initial draw of the money that you give them. You don't have to give it to them, but they can go out, they can do $700,000 worth of work and come in and request $250,000. And then when they're done with 1.4 million, they'll request the final draw. You can reject that, but that option is there for them. But I'll be clear because
they got 500,000.
Tonight is you are approving X dollars.
Okay,
How they get it back is up to you.
Let me make sure it's clear for me then.
Okay.
Because there's been a lot of back and forth. All I'm saying is, if we approve $500,000 tonight for the mall, okay, and they go out and spend it on that new entrance right there, and then they don't do anything else on the plan, do we still have to write a check for that $500,000 even if nothing else on the plan is complete in that 1.4 million total budget? That's my caveat.
By the plan, do you mean the 1.4 million, or do you mean other stuff beyond that?
No, what's in the
They
scope?
need to spend 1.4.
So that's why I said makes me feel comfortable. If they have to spend the 1.4 total in order to get the payout, or which would be 900 for them, and do all of the totality of the work that's in the scopes here, then I feel fine because it's not just our money out on the table. Now it's a partnership where they've put their 900, we've put our 5, and I feel comfortable with that because we're moving forward on a grandiose scale opposed to just one thing that our money paid for and then here we go. That was what I was trying to say.
Can I just say, is that Rick that's the contractor there? Is that understanding correct?
Yeah,
that you-
there's I mean, is it okay?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not very specific. And I saw the H if it wants to look under the thing. It's on the grant reimbursement.
My name is Rick Rojas, RJ Builders. I'm here representing the mall as well. The mall owners would have been here in person this week, but they've rearranged their schedule because they want to attend the first Leesburg Bike Fest that they've experienced. They've really embraced the city of Leesburg with the warm welcoming by all of the city staff, the commissioners, mayor, and as well as Lake County's staff and commissioners. They really see a great vision in Leesburg for additional projects as well. To clarify a little bit on the facade improvement here, it's being discussed as one main entry, but it's actually going to be 2 entrances. So I'm gonna turn this around so everybody can see what we're talking about. So if everybody's familiar with the mall entrance at the Cuba restaurant, as well as the entrance between PetSmart and Books A Million, those are the 2 mall main entrances, and that's what's going to be constructed there. With the increased budget amount, as was offered so generously by the commission weeks ago about increasing the dollar amount to $500,000, that allows us to increase the scope of the work to not only include the construction of these 2 canopy entrances with a full drop-off lane divided by a median strip, and then still maintaining the 2 drive-through lanes, but it also allows the mall owners to enhance the beautification to include resurfacing a good portion, a majority of the portion of the south side of the mall building, which faces 441. At this point, we won't be looking at Belk's or the Sears or JCPenney's former building because we have to fall under their guidelines as well. But at least we can take and reclad, whether it be with stucco or some more cementous product or metal, a multitude of different what we call cladding products. But it allows us to expand the scope of the work significantly. Just to also make aware of the dedication and commitment that the owners of the mall have made so far, that's not being seen. So far in hard cost that has personally been written checks by me, hard costs in the mall improvements are $485,000 to include what we've done in store improvements or store construction, preparation for the new stores. We have 3 new tenants also coming into the mall in addition to the 4. Well, actually, I take that back. It's going to be 4 more because we have one that's almost completed as well. You'll be happy to know a men's store, similar to your former store. They've also spent $90,000 in rooftop air conditioning replacements that nobody knows about. I'm sure some of you have seen cranes out there, but one of the biggest complaints and the reason I think we lost JCPenney's was the result of people complaining that nobody was taking care of the AC systems. The mall was hot, so the first order of business when they approached me about this was the biggest complaint was the mall's always hot. So they've taken upon themselves to start this already, and that's not including the other air conditioning units that are already on order. We have 2 25-ton units that are going on top of Belk's. In addition, they've just signed a contract for the Belk's re-roof in negotiations with Belk's to maintain them as a mall tenant. And that roof replacement is going to cost $300,000 just for the Belk's roof. The air conditioning systems are going to cost $50,000 just for Belk's. We've already replaced one that was included in the $90,000 figure. The $485,000, the majority of that money has been impacted, here locally. It's laborers, it's suppliers. I mean, their dedication to bringing economic development back to the city of Leesburg and Lake County far outweighs anything else that's in their vision. That's what they do. This company is dedicated. If you look at prior projects of theirs, they're dedicated to economic development, redevelopment, and economic boost. So, with that in mind, I just want to shed light on where this money was being spent.
So Rick, just on the in the grant reimbursement, and Al was talking about the, you guys get halfway through, you could request a draw. Here it says applicants may request up to 2 draws on each approved grant. Each draw shall be subject to review and decision by the city council. So your understanding is that once you get halfway through, majority through, then you could come request a draw at that midpoint.
That's correct. That way there's no, and the only reason to do that, because there would be no delay in moving forward to the next phase of that same project.
We're not going to see you in 2 weeks, though.
No, we're not going to see you in 2 weeks. No.
That's what makes sure everybody got understanding, because I don't want to say, come back in the next month. Yeah.
No, but...
And I think this is a good discussion, too, because if you go to page 7 of 9 of their application, which is section 6, estimated cost, Rick outlined a number of improvements that they've already done. Now, I would say, that those improvements aren't qualifying for these improvements. I mean, you may have done stuff like AC, like the Lake Squares dumped money into doing the AC. I'm going to say the money they dumped into the AC doesn't qualify for this because there's points A through J plus the 3 additionals. Those are the things that our staff will look to ensure that they made those improvements to. Now, I would say that they could shift their money anywhere in that, but that's so. And let me read that out loud. So, in their grant application, they proposed to make $76,000 of window and door replacements, $165,000 for exterior paint and stucco, $30,000 for signage, $30,000 for exterior lighting, $480,000 for facade exterior architecture improvement, and that's $480,000 towards that picture, $30,000 for architectural design fees. So your design fee for whoever, let me see that bill. Your landscape hardscape improvement, so that's parking spots, landscaping improvements, those type of invoicing. Building permit and planning fees, $8,000. Are we really going to charge them $8,000 on that? Will we go that high? If they do, we'll know. $30,000 for, and then they got other improvements, and they had 3 categories there. $30,000 worth of curbing and sidewalk that they're going to do. $330,000 for repaving the parking lot, as we mentioned, and then $245,000. They had some contractor profit and overhead there too. So you put all those things together, bam, that's $1.4 million.
Well,
and we'll go up
you
to.
kind of really made my point of why I said this is a lot of money. How long have they had them on? How long have they owned it?
They closed October 15th of last year, 2017.
So approximately 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And in that 6 months, they've spent $490,000.
No, well, 485 plus 90, and they're committed to spend another 350 just with the Belk section.
Up to now, they've spent basically $500,000.
$500,000.
And you're bragging that that's a lot of money. So my point is, heck yeah, it's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm being cautious, because it's a lot of money. It almost matches what you've spent to date.
Fully
so that's
understand.
all I was saying is I just wanted you to understand that to us it is a lot of money, and that I wanted to make sure that it was seen that way instead of we just got deep pockets, here's 500, hope for the best and go.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's all I was trying to just project out there.
And I was sharing these figures just to indicate how much of an economic impact they've already had in the city of Leesburg.
Yeah, and
Not only that, but they've created jobs with those 4 new stores. We're going to have the additional stores creating jobs.
Any of those chains at all?
I'm sorry?
Any chains at all?
Not national chains. They're international chains though. But
when do you think this project will start if this is approved?
well, the site plan, the civil side will be permitted probably tomorrow. We'll be applying for application tomorrow if all goes well. And then we're still working on the steel structural engineering, but I do have all the construction documents already completed for the project.
So break ground?
Probably within the 30 days.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I point out again, this pretty much these are all outside exterior improvements that you're going to see.
Oh yeah, the whole storefronts that are existing now, those are going to be removed. We're raising the header height another 2 feet to give it a bigger storefront, lower profile extrusions, make it look more like a Mall of the Millennia or something you would see at Aventura Mall or some big city mall. The sidewalk, which I failed to mention, is coming off of what will be the front of this canopy. This would be a covered walkway for the future out parcels. So once again, everybody can see, we'll have a covered walkway with sidewalk extending out to the future out parcels. Which, you know, they don't want to disclose too much, but we do have a master plan already drawn. If I can get this thing to stay.
Forest line. Yeah, the forest up
There you
here.
go. Yeah, we have the master plan already drawn up for the future out parcels. I think everybody will be impressed once we disclose that to the city.
I hope one of those is Trader Joe's.
That we'll make a note for that. We're working on that. There is a survey on Facebook that the more people that can participate in that survey, they are populating. In fact, I've already populated a good amount of those votes and suggestions that they're going to take to the ICSC show in Vegas, which is the end of May, which is actually the commerce show that all the retailers and restaurants are there to seal deals. You know, so there is activity out at the mall. More people are calling for information on tenancy. The population, I'm out there every day. It's amazing to see the number of people. In fact, I was out there yesterday, and at 3:15, took a picture and sent it to Mayor, the owner, and there was only a handful of tables open in the food court. The food court was fully populated, even with this small amount of food vendors that we have there. So he was quite impressed. I'm impressed. Like I said, I've been here. When the mall was open, I was a freshman at Leesburg High School. It's nice to see this energy and this excitement from people approaching me about the mall project.
More comments?
Any questions?
Any comments from the public? Okay, roll call.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hurley.
Roll call of. This is an up to amount. Roll call of.
No, you approved the resolution. I believe the resolution's written so that it is 500,000. And that motion's on the floor.
Commissioner Hurley.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dennison.
Yes.
Commissioner Bone.
Yes.
Commissioner Christian.
Yes.
Mayor Roebuck.
RJ Builders, who submitted this as a customer, so I'll abstain.
Good luck at the conference in May. I hope they bring back some tenants with these pictures you're going to have there.
Big box.
Hopefully by the pictures of the construction process going on.
Right. So on to 5D. Someone would like to introduce?
I'll introduce Hester Evans.
Resolution considering the purchase of 2206 Griffin Road for the Public Works Lift Station Maintenance Division and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion.
Can you explain, just this is the piece of property,
Yeah.
where is that exactly on?
Down from the fire department.
It's just
By the-
past the electric department on the north side of Griffin Road, across from the convenience store.
A little further down.
Kitty corner, just a tick more down.
That big
Look,
big
I just briefly on this, in the spirit of full disclosure, in the fiscal year 18 budget, the city allocated $500,000 to replace the storage and facility structure for the lift station crew in the solid waste department. That facility right now is located on the 470 property. The reason that staff recommended and the commission approved that $500,000 expense was twofold. First, with the sale for the villages and the villages moving in, that building is going to need to be demolished and removed for villages development. But also, secondly, that building is in, frankly, extreme disrepair. It's rusting out. It's old. It hasn't seen a lot of maintenance. And whether we sold the property to the villages or not, that facility needed to be rebuilt. In the course of finding locations for this, we identified this location, which is the old Foundry building there on Griffin Road, and that site I would call and meets all definition of a blighted site. It's an old industrial area. It's an ugly, decrepit building. Likelihood of redevelopment there is probably not great. So the concept, frankly, came from my desk, which is, if we spend a little extra money on this project, we can buy a blighted site, we can remove it, we can put up a nice new building, and we can help improve and redevelop a corridor that needs reinvestment. Bottom line, I think this is a good process because it invests in blight and it removes blight. Second part of the bottom line, if you do this, you're going to increase your cost by $200,000. If the commission chooses not to move forward with this project, we still need to build a building, and then we would come back and recommend that the building be built over here behind the what we call east substation, the substation that's right next to the trolley plant, where we do have a couple of acres, and the existing parks and ground crew equipment shed is there. We would locate it there. So option one would be, do you want the Griffin site? A couple more things on the Griffin site. There are a couple caveats in that contract. One is that I think we have to do a wetlands delineation on that, because we are concerned that we have some wetlands that may encroach on the buildable area, so we need to investigate that. And two, we also have to do a phase 1 environmental. A phase 2 environmental. We already did the phase 1. We got to do a phase 2. If those issues prove that we don't have the buildable lot, or there's environmental issues, you can still back out of the deal. But approving the contract tonight would put us on track to do some more due diligence, and if that due diligence proves fruitful, then we would purchase the lot.
So, there's a building on the lot, so we would tear that down and rebuild?
Yes.
So here's my question. So this is real close to the hotel on 441.
Yes.
So how much what can we get that for? I mean, if we start talking about taking out blighted property, not to move the substation there, but
before this discussion gets too far, I need to tell you that I had a phone call today that I haven't had a chance to return yet because I was out of town at a hearing, and it was somebody requesting a payoff to pay the lien off to stop the foreclosure, so I wouldn't count on that being available.
Right. Well, I'm just talking about a direct purchase even. So, yeah.
Is that your meeting? Mike, why don't you disclose that meeting so the commission knows? Don't mean to digress, but I mean, that's a good point, because we're investing in blighted parcels. As you know, Fred's been working on a foreclosure. Mike's been dealing with interests from other parties who seek to purchase the hotel. And on the 7th, you have a meeting associated with that.
Mike Rankin, Deputy City Manager. Mr. Minner and I have been working with somebody who's interested in acquiring the hotel with the potential date of a May 7th closing date for the property. So they did ask for the payoff. We were aware today that they contacted Fred for payoff. It looks like potentially the owner will be selling the hotel on the 7th of May for closing.
Any idea what the new use would be?
I'm going to make an assumption that it would probably be redevelopment of the property.
Like tear down redevelopment or
partial tear down.
Refurbished hotel.
That's an assumption.
Or to deal with our homeless issues.
No, it doesn't have anything to do. Hopefully it would be a higher quality hotel than something that homeless.
And they've already done their due diligence on the environmental and all that good stuff.
I'm sure there'll be all sorts of contingencies in their contract.
It's right around the corner.
And that's why the other deal fell through with the Wawa.
They didn't want to do it this week, so they'd be open for Bike Fest, or?
I happened to go by there at the right time the other day, and they were drilling what appeared to be test wells in front of the gas station, and there were people swarming all over the hotel building as if they were doing evaluations.
Okay.
So here's my thought. So if we were going to spend $200,000 to invest in blight and understand the need for the new station and everything, but could we wait and just see what happens? Because, you know, I would like to consider whether or not we spend $200,000 to buy this piece of property versus, you know, $250,000 or something to buy that. I don't know the price or.
Well, I think there's a lot of properties for me that would probably come before this particular one.
Right, that's what I'm saying is that.
And I don't want to pressure you. If this one's not deemed as a priority, then I would recommend you move on, because we do have a little bit of a time restraint. DC, do you remember April 2019? April 2019, we have to have the facility off of the 470 property.
So would it have to be in an industrial area, the new building, or would that matter?
It wouldn't matter. My recommendation to the committee, I mean, if we found another blighted parcel, then we could consider that. But we just, if this one is too expensive, if this timing's not right, if this isn't a priority one, then I would capitulate with the commission's desires there. And either A, we go look for another blighted area where we could reinvest, or B, we start building the facility over on the city property. But I would say if you consider A or B, we have another month or two to toy around with different locations to give us really 6 to 7 months to procure and get this building built, so we're out of there by April.
Well, and for me, if we have property, I'd rather just use our own and buy other property that we can then turn into commercial use and stay on the tax roll instead of keep adding more property to the city. If we're going to buy other stuff, I'd rather just buy it, tear down a building, and then get a non-public use on it. Yeah.
Right.
You want to see this redeveloped?
I mean, it's good, but I think if you got city property, I mean, that you can build on. If we're gonna do it on city, that means we got $200,000. If that's our goal, to eliminate blight, I mean, I think we should look at areas like the hotel, the other areas in Leesburg. We talked about the homeless situation, we talked about the mall, but we're gonna sit and we're gonna have the issues. I mean, we talked about all the great things downtown, as Jerry Garwood came up a few weeks ago. Now you're gonna be talking about parking. So I think there's some other things when we sit down for a master plan that we're gonna have to really look at. And so we got $200,000 that we can use, and we got city property. I would kind of say let's build on city property. As much as I would like to see this old ugly building knocked down, yeah. My thing was, even with the contingency of, is it going to be enough land for us to do what we need to do? And I would say, you know, because the county has a big ugly fence right beside it. It looks really ugly.
Even that is still, it's a tight spot.
Now that building, it looks like a shell of a building that's on there.
Can you address that, DC?
How can we not just deal with it through code enforcement and make them not take that down? It also they do have contamination, so I'm sure you found something in the phase 1.
And I think phase 2 is going to be just bad.
Because of the prior use.
Well,
There's enforcement action. I just looked it up on Oculus for hazardous waste. Yeah.
Is that city or county? That was county or city?
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll get with Chief on that if we ultimately don't go this route.
And while we're there, can we maybe call the county to see if they can do something with the fence next door, because they got that green, ugly looking fence up. You know, it's trying to hide their equipment, but it's not doing a very good job. And that's probably an eyesore than the building beside it.
Okay.
Just clean up blight, just like that.
So we're just gonna
code enforcement call it.
We're gonna move on then. Does that sound like that?
Was there a motion? Did they make a motion on this? Yes. They did? Yeah, so you need to vote.
Okay.
And if the answer is no, then the contract won't be approved. Then we'll get back and we'll look for alternatives.
Any comments from public? Roll call.
Commissioner Dennison?
No.
Commissioner Bone?
No.
Commissioner Christian?
No.
Commissioner Hurley?
No.
Mayor Roebuck?
No. So that will move us to 5E, if someone would like to introduce. Okay.
I'll introduce it. It has to be read by title only, please.
Resolution of the City of Leesburg, Florida, authorizing certain amendments relating to its outstanding hospital revenue refunding bonds, Central Florida Health Alliance Projects, Series 2011, authorizing the execution and delivery of all other related instruments, including, without limitation, a replacement 2011 bond, providing for other miscellaneous matters in connection with the foregoing, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments from the commission? Comments from the public? Roll call.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Dennison?
Yes.
Mayor Robuck?
Yes. So we're now on to 5F. Someone would like to introduce?
I'll introduce, ask to be read by title only.
Resolution of the City Commission of the City of Leesburg, Florida, to amend and restate an interlocal agreement between Lake County and municipalities relating to local option fuel tax, adding a revenue sharing agreement for the additional 5-cent local option fuel tax, and providing an effective date.
Move for approval.
Second.
Comments from the commission? So I'm just going to throw this out there. There's nothing we can do about it, but they changed the way that they do the gas tax distribution to municipalities like 2 years ago, and we really got kind of on the short end of that one because it's by population mostly, and then roads. So all the money's going to South Lake. So I'm going to vote against putting it on the ballot, period, even though they can put it on without us, just because I get very frustrated about them continuing to, the county continuing to push money to South Lake, which is what I think is going to happen with this, and the county keeping 2/3 of the money as opposed to an even split with the cities. I think that's also just not particularly effective. So I just throw it out there. Comments from public? Roll call.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes.
Commissioner Hurley?
No.
Commissioner Dennison?
No.
Commissioner Bone?
Yes.
Mayor Robuck?
No. Okay, so that's the end of our regular agenda. Do we have any items from the city attorney?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
City manager?
I have a few items for the commission. First, if you recall, I believe last fiscal year, we allocated about $100,000 to do the restroom project at our facilities next door. The point to that project was to have an indoor restroom facility so that the porta-johns on Market Street could be removed, and hopefully we can get with the partnership and get the other recycling bins and all that removed so that corridor is a little bit nicer there. We are ready now to go out to bid on that project, and I just wanted to make sure that the commission still supported that project. It's about $100,000. Was that the allocation we had? Was it about 125? It was 125 we did allocate for it. And again, what that would do is we've gone through some preliminary design, and what happens is the LMCS building, or LMSC building, one of these front windows here actually gets turned into a door. We seal off some compartments in there so that for public events, the public can access those restrooms.
I think about it every Saturday when I go buy my fish at the market. So I look over there and I'm like, I got to look at those porta potties while I'm buying my salmon.
And we'll address with staff, but it will be a secured facility. It will be open for market. It will be closed at nights. And we can work that so that that's safe and there's a good interaction. It'll require some more janitorial services on us, but at the end of the day, I think it's a good improvement for downtown to have those public restrooms for folks who visit our downtown, so they don't have to use porta-johns. So we'll move into procurement on that. So that will be back before you when the contract is ready to go. Also wanted to give you a quick update on the community center project. We are steaming forward. We are working diligently to try, of course, upon approval from the commission, to have groundbreaking on the project by July 15th. Next meeting, May 14th, will be a big meeting for the commission to get updated on some budget parameters. Evergreen's on board. They've been working with George Borelli and Associates to come up with, we're not at the maximum guaranteed price yet. We don't anticipate that really till August. But we do anticipate bringing to the commission a very solid estimate on what we think the cost for the building will be. They being Evergreen has committed to, at the end of this month, getting us that number. We'll review it with them. So we hope to get that to the commission at your first May meeting, to a degree that you feel comfortable shifting some funds over now and then authorizing us to go ahead and get started on the project. So that is that good discussion I look forward to. at your May meeting. Also, Commissioner Dennison asked for some follow-up on the Arlington Ridge matter with the industrial user next to Arlington Ridge. So let me provide you this quick update. Staff did get in contact with the county, and we learned that Sherry O'Brien, she was the resident, I think, who presented the situation to you at the last meeting. She did meet with the county and again reiterated the noise problems and many of the things that the residents reiterated to us. And they also met with the county attorney, Commissioner Breeden, and Tim McClellan about the issue. The county is in a bit of a standstill. They've noted that the property is properly zoned, that GI Shavings, the company, has been working to try to regulate their business. Then they'll also point out too that the county has a noise ordinance, but we don't. So we will move on to get that noise ordinance in effect. And is that an issue? I mean, can't the county's noise ordinance would cover Arlington Ridge, being it would it or would it not? Or is that a planning and zoning issue?
The noise is emanating from the county, so to the extent you apply a noise ordinance, it would have to be theirs, because we couldn't regulate noise coming from outside the city limits.
So maybe I need to get with you, and maybe you need to give them that legal advice that they can implement their noise ordinance.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so we have about 3 staff, and Mrs. O'Brien's also doing a letter writing campaign. She's getting with Larry Metz, Senator Baxley, Daniel Webster, Bill Nelson, and they're starting a letter writing campaign. I think we have 3 avenues that I'll follow up with staff on, and obviously the one is with Fred. Encouraging the county to use their noise ordinance. We need to get our noise ordinance going. And then I'd also like to revisit the Navy ordinance with the county a little bit. As you know, with the last year, I think in 17 is officially when they adopted the naval overlay ordinance because of Bug Spring out there. I think that facility existed prior to the adoption of the ordinance, but it's clearly in the level 3 of the ordinance, and level 3 of the ordinance prohibits that type of manufacturing these days. So it's a double-edged sword, because if we start pushing that issue, we are certainly killing industrial development in that corridor, which we're headed there anyway. But it's certainly a development that, if it was posed to even the city today, we would probably not approve it based on the naval ordinance that we'll be bringing to commission that's associated with the village's closing. And by the way, the county's already approved that, so I would assume that if a similar facility came to the county, they would not approve that today. So we'll follow up on that. Lastly, just as a side note, I think this evening's meeting was a very productive one. I think you had good discussion on the mall issue and that grant. And just as a side note, and again, I presented to the commission the vision and mission and goal statement. I think you guys wanted a little bit more work on that, and we'll move in that direction. We'll adopt those into the budget process, so you'll see those mission, vision, and goal statements again. But I just wanted to remind the commission, I think that we do have a vision. We are moving in a direction, and the actions you took tonight with granting the grant to the mall, that's goal number 2. And so we accomplished a major task on goal number 2, and the consideration of the Griffin property, again, that was goal number 2. So I'm excited about that, and as we get into the budget process, we'll be bringing to you a branding RFP shortly, as a branding and an advertising RFP to move forward hand in hand with the budget process. So those are the things I have for you tonight.
Okay, public comments. This section is reserved for members of the public to bring up matters of concern or opportunities for praise. Issues brought up will not be discussed in detail at this meeting. Issues will either be referred to the proper staff or be scheduled for consideration at a future City Commission meeting. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Any comments from the public? Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Dennison?
Yes. First of all, Arlington Ridge, it's not just a noise problem. They also understand that this company sprays insecticide and antifungal material onto the shavings, and that's some of what is being blown out into the air. So while it's nice that the county should be responsible for it, it's our citizens that are getting sick. So we've got to follow up with more than just a noise ordinance. It's got to be something about the chemicals that are being pumped out into the air over there. So I just wanted to get that on record, that it's not just noise. The airport. I understand there's a hangar becoming available, and what we normally do, Tracy, if I'm wrong, please correct me, what we normally do is advertise it in one of the aviation magazines to let people know that there's a hangar available, and it runs us about $1,900 for that ad.
Yeah, I don't believe that's been our typical process. We've talked about advertising in the past, and we've never made advertising of a hangar. We've done it. I think we did it most recently since I've been here with the bunker hangar.
Which hangar?
Was that the bunker hangar that we did?
That was before my time.
Yeah,
There is two coming back to city ownership. And yes, I'm working with Mike Thornton in purchasing to do a request for offers. Probably, I'm not sure of the timeline, hopefully within the next couple of months. I'm thinking advertise it locally. I also have provided Mike with a list of probably 20, 25 email addresses of people, both current tenants who would like the opportunity to expand, and then outside people who have shown interest. So either concurrently or just in advance of it going out on the street, that they would get notification, so they would have an opportunity.
Okay, is it possible to take this and change it to the fact that maybe we can do a right of first refusal for our current tenants? So that if they've got to expand, that is made available to them first, give them 2 weeks, a month, whatever, and then put it out to the public. I don't know if there's anything legal with that.
There is a first right refusal in those contracts.
No. And I'm not sure the FAA would even allow that.
Okay, can we check into that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Which hangars are they?
32720 and 32740 Echo Drive. They're both previously C wings. One sits behind the old tropical helicopter building.
Okay.
And it's got side access and then a taxi lane that only services the tropical in that one building. The other is immediately next to the fuel farm off of Echo.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll get back to you on this. I'll speak with Tracy in more detail and write about this, and either at the meeting or I'll get you an email.
Great, thank you. The other issue I have, I got a call from the Women's Club in Leesburg. They had put $500 into the fundraising when we were putting together Rogers Park, and the bench still is not there, and the money did go to the city, so they're looking for their bench with the plaque on it.
I'll get the bench out.
Thank you very much. And back in February, I had asked for Carver Heights financials, and I still have not seen any of those.
You want the CDC financials?
Yes. And finally, with the Bike Fest coming up this weekend, I hope everybody that goes enjoys it. Be safe. Think about our poor first responders who are going to be out there. It's not supposed to be as hot as it has been in the past, so that should be a little bit better. But stay safe. Thank you.
Commissioner Hurley?
No, ma'am.
Commissioner Christian?
Yes, I want to commend our staff. I think Al did a very commendable job at looking at blight on Griffin Road for many years. Those properties have kind of sat in limbo. So I do want to commend the staff for bringing a kind of a progressive thought process on how to get rid of a very blighted area in one of our main quarters. Met with several of the schools. Heard some of the other commissioners went Fruitland Park and Carver, and kind of the same sentiments from both schools about a need to do something after school for our youth. So hopefully with the Boys and Girls Club and the potential of a teen center will assist And what I kept echoing to the schools is it has to be a comprehensive, not just the city, but also the school board and many of our nonprofit partners working together to make sure that we provide a safe place for our kids so they can have additional learning, so that we can see an overall improvement of all of our schools in the Leesburg area. So I just want to commend the staff on working hard, and Bike Fest is coming, and so I heard nothing but very good things and a lot of good positive things come out of the downtown. So I'm sure our staff is working hard with from our building department. I want to say to Al, I think he put Dan on the spot a little bit when he asked him was, he spent $8,000. He got budget time coming up, and I'm sure Dan wants his budget to be where it needs to be, so $8,000 is going to help Dan's budget. So you answered very good, Dan. That's all I have, man.
Commissioner Bell?
Try to be brief, Mr. Commissioner Hurley, but actually I'm going to bring up one thing Commissioner Hurley had brought up some months ago, a couple years ago, and I actually thought it was going to come back, and that was on the thrift shop. Particularly, there was one that I think was of concern to Commissioner Hurley, and there was an ordinance that was brought forward. And he wasn't even here, and it didn't pass. I think at that particular meeting, that might have been when you had one of your injuries there, but. But in that discussion of it, what I had asked that we look at having an ordinance that would somehow, if we weren't going to do exactly what that ordinance had said, as far as the outdoor storage and and things that were involved, that we have some ordinance that did tighten things up, and that's never come back. And if it's not going to come back, I would like to see the old ordinance that was presented come back myself, because I do think that those are. As part of the blight issues that we need to address as a city, the outdoor storage, so to positive, hopefully that give me some more time to talk here, Commissioner Hurley. But that does relate to all the things that are going on. And again, I recognize the newspaper, and I appreciate the positive articles that are being written acknowledging the things that are happening in Leesburg. And because there are so many great things that are going on and great opportunities that are here. With that said, I think that this is a continued push, and I think there was something that was mentioned in the article about Tom Frost, downtown and the things he's doing, and he made a comment about this is a time we just really need to push to get ourselves further in that direction over the top. And so I do see several things that I think as a commission that we've talked about that I could kind of run through a list. I mean, the corridors, our recreation, residential grants, the schools, youth, the teen center, additional staffing and code enforcement, planning department needs, and the blighted property, swimming pool. You could just run through a number of things there. I can throw a couple more on there. I think arts are important in Leesburg, and we've got a nice art, the Melon Patch here, and they do some nice shows. I think that facility needs some help there, and they didn't approach me, but I did, because I do think that the arts are important to Leesburg, and knowing that is our theater in town for performing arts. I think, and people do come from the villages to go there. I've seen them when we're there. I think we need to make a better impression, have better facilities there. And so I actually asked them, and I forgot to bring the letter, but I asked Dustin there if he could give me a list of things that they need, which he did. Things from a roof to lights to air conditioning, that kind of thing. So I'd like to bring that up later, and that's one of those things. I mentioned this one to Al with the villages getting closer and potentially having the golf cart access that goes across 44, that maybe we could consider doing a shuttle service from like Lake Deaton, where the Publix is, into downtown Leesburg, so that there could be something to facilitate people from the villages being able to get in town. We've got potentially tons of homes coming in there, and with that golf cart access, as I would understand it, would connect all the way into going up, what is it? What's the road there?
Morse Boulevard?
Morse Boulevard, going through Morse Boulevard. That potentially maybe we could make it easier for people with golf carts that are in that part of the villages to get transportation into Leesburg. So that's one. So all that being said, and budget time coming up, and looking at the investment that the mall's making and our contributions there, and investment that people are making downtown, a lot of the investment that we're seeing is a result of, is needed because of some neglect over time that has occurred downtown or at the mall. And frankly, Leesburg as a whole, there's been some neglect for a period of time, and that puts us in a position where we do need to spend more money, and which we are doing, to improve Leesburg and continue this push that's happening to get us over the top. So I would like to ask that we, as we do the budget, that we look real close at comparing what our ad valorem and our fire assessment rates are compared to our surrounding cities. I don't think we need to be the cheapest. And in fact, just generally, in being in business, you can't succeed if your theme is to be the cheapest. And so I think that there's some room within our fire assessment and with our ad valorem tax to be more comparable to our surrounding communities. That would provide opportunity to be able to address all of these things that if we focus and we create some good projects, and as we're doing now, that we can provide funding to be able to do these things and to push ourselves over the top and maintain all this momentum. What I would hate to see us do is with everything we're doing, that we're pushing to get over the top, and something happen and we slide back down again. And so I think this is an opportunity to do it. I think our ad valorems are lower than our comparable neighbors, and our fire assessments are lower as well. So I would ask that whether or not we would increase any of those, that at least to see the numbers of what potential there is within the budget this year. Okay. That's all I have tonight.
Mayor Robert?
Well, I think certainly, a lot of things that we talked about tonight are, they're good problems. We're talking about dealing with the homeless because we have a thriving downtown district, and maybe in the past the problem was there, but we didn't have all these businesses, so people kind of didn't complain. So a lot of the problems we're dealing with are I think, good problems with a growing city. I do strongly feel that we do not need to raise our ad valorem rate or our fire assessment. I was against the fire assessment to start with. I still don't think we need it. We have lots of cash. Lady Lake has the lowest property tax rate in the county, and I think that they're doing just great. I think we're providing plenty of services, but the way to grow the city is to have a business-friendly environment where businesses and residents want to be here, and then your property values increase and your revenues increase. And as a business owner who pays a lot of property taxes, and with the new homestead exemption, is going to be expected to pay even more, I think the absolutely worst thing we could do would be to raise our ad valorem and fire assessment, because we're still in the position where we're trying to attract businesses, and that is something they absolutely look at. We got a lot of things that we can't control the schools. We're trying to help a little bit, but we can't control them. Right. And so, obviously we'll look at them at budget time, but I'm just telling you right now, I am 100% against raising any type of property ad valorem or fire assessment. That's it. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.